Good morning, everybody. How's it going? I've got some background music playing, so I've turned off my speakers. I'm not sure if it's coming through on the stream. I think it is. But I took my headphones off so that I didn't look like I was sitting with headphones on. So how are you all doing today? My name's Cams, I'm an alcoholic. Let's just get that out of the way. And I'm here today to do my regular Sunday morning recovery chat. Let me just start out by saying it's very cold. I'm sitting here with a cup of coffee trying to warm my hands because I want to play some guitar for you. And that's not easy to do when your hands are cold. I'm going to be featuring my Kim Walker guitar this morning, which is probably my poshest guitar, and it's one that's been in its case for a while. And I watched a video this week from one of my favourite guitar makers called Tom Sands, and he posted a video of a guitar being played by Will McNichol. And Will's one of my favourite musicians in the world, and Will played this guitar which was built from it was built from some mahogany called the Tree, which comes from an incredible tree that was felled somewhere I know not, and the wood has become legendary in the guitar making world. It's unbelievably figured, incredible wood to look at. And the top is Adirondack spruce, which is also known as red spruce, which in the guitar world is known as having incredible headroom, but in some senses it can be difficult to drive, so you can play it hard and the wood will wake up. And my Kim Walker guitar has a red spruce top, and Kim Walker does amazing things with Adirondack spruce, and what he's done with my guitar is he's made it so that it responds to a light touch. I suppose it would make more sense if I had it in my hands while I were talking about it. I didn't know this is where I was going to go so early off the bat, but here we are. Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Michael. Let's bring Matt up. Watching from bed, good stuff. And my good friend Michael. Nice to see you both. So this is the Kim Walker. It's a small jumbo with an amazing sunburst top. And look at the back and sides there. That's maple. So it has a flamed maple top. 5-piece maple neck, Waverley tuners, and a beautiful headstock inlay with his logo. So how did we get into the subject of guitars so soon? Because my hands were cold, that's how. It's a beautiful day here on Arran. There's frost on the grass, the sun is out. It's just one of those days that we're glad to be alive, and particularly glad to be sober. That has to be said. Sunday was typically a hangover day back in the old days. And I've been looking through my old diary entries, which is a thing I enjoy doing because it kind of gives me some context and continuity in my life. And I have entries coming up from when I was working abroad in Kazakhstan. And I was making journal entries for my arrival there, which was in late December 1999, and also my next year, because I left in May 2001, and I was writing emails to my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend, but I kept records of those emails and I've put them into my day one journal so that I can look back. And on these days Well, particularly when I was in Kazakhstan, it was a big drinking place for me. When I got there, it was just before the millennium, so I think it was the 28th of December 1999. Well, Bob Aaron is saying it's minus 2.7 degrees in Brodick. That's pretty cold. I was just talking to a friend of mine in Melbourne, where it's now 8 p.m. Well, it's probably 9 p.m. now because it was an hour ago. And he said that it was 36 degrees. Imagine. He's actually still in the Zoom call that I'm in, so they can all see me. That's funny. So when I got to Almaty, I was introduced to an Irish pub fairly early on. And my flat was quite close, and what I used to do is I would leave work on a Friday and I would go out to Murphy's. It was called Mad Murphy's, of course it was. And Heineken was my drink at the time. I used to drink a shed load of Heineken in that bar. And it was mainly expats that were in there, but there were a few locals too. And so what's come up in my journal entries is, well, first of all, I was comfortable telling my girlfriend that I was going to the pub and I was getting drunk. So I think this would have been before she'd actually got to see firsthand really just how bad my alcoholism was. And so I would tell her that I was out in the pub till 5. That's what just came up in the entry that I read earlier. So, yeah, it was a common thing to spend my days in the pub. And I can remember, as I made friends in the workplace, and in Almaty you're surrounded by the Tian Shan mountain range, which borders China and Kyrgyzstan. And a lot of my work colleagues used to go up to the mountains at weekends to go skiing. Now, skiing wasn't something that I could ever do because of my leg injuries, but you could go into the mountains and spend some enjoyable time going to the sauna and chilling. You know, it was a really nice ski resort. And so when they would invite me, I would say to myself, I'm sorry, I can't make it, I've got plans. And do you know what those plans were? I bet you can guess, right? I was planning on going to the pub. How ridiculous is that? So you're in a far off country, in a foreign land, looking to expose yourself to the language and the culture. And when you're invited to go somewhere with your work colleagues and friends, you refuse because you've got plans to get drunk in the pub. At least it was in the pub and I wasn't sitting home on my own, so I was getting some exposure to the culture. I did go one time into the mountains, and I have photographs from that time of me drunk, obviously, in the ski resort. And I have good memories of that trip, actually. It was a very enjoyable trip to the mountains. I did miss a trip to China. I was invited to China by some friends. Not quite sure how far it was, but it wasn't terribly far. You know, a few hours in a car. And I was like, nope, got plans. I'm drinking this weekend. We used to go bowling a lot as well in Almaty. And I can remember on those occasions really going through the whole struggle of not wanting my colleagues to see my drinking or how bad it was. So trying to pace myself when I was in company. And be looking forward to getting back to my apartment where I could drink properly. Here's Yath. Nice to see you. Yath's another part-time YouTuber doing medical content and productivity. So, yeah, Kazakhstan was a place where I drank. And incidentally, that was where I went to my first AA meeting. I remember going to somebody's apartment on a Sunday morning. Their names were Dan and John. I have that written down in my journal. And I remember that was when I was first introduced to the Big Book of AA. And I read it. I remember taking notes, or actually no, it wasn't notes, it was a post. Because in those days I was a member of a website called The Motley Fool, which was primarily for investing, learning about personal finance. But they had these discussion boards, one of which was called the Comfort Cafe. And it was all about mental health, alcoholism, problems, you know. And it was, I mean, this was the early days of web forums, bulletin boards. And I remember posting on there, having just read the introduction to the Big Book. And there was a part where they talked about being in a cemetery and a gravestone of an old soldier, or the unknown soldier. And I remember feeling identification with that and kind of being a bit accepting, I suppose, that this was who I was and this is what I'd become, and I was actually reaching out. The problem was that I wasn't doing it for me. This was because my landlady of my apartment, right, when she heard that my girlfriend was coming to visit, she got very excited and she said, "We'll have to have a party." And they were a nice couple, my landlady and her husband. And they put on a dinner party for us. And as a special treat, they got in a bottle of whiskey for me. It was Glenfiddich. It wasn't my favourite brand, but I wasn't too fussy in those days. And I can't remember how much of that whiskey I drank. On top of the vodka, you know, the toasting, and the wine with the meal. So, long story short, I drank myself into blackout. And my wife told me that I was pretty nasty. And she had to walk me home, basically. She had to hold me up to get me back home. Now bear in mind, it was dark. It was Almaty, Kazakhstan, which is, you know, maybe not the safest of cities, but I suppose any city at that time of night. But when you're vulnerable like that and falling around drunk, you know, it's pretty scary for her. And so she got to see firsthand. She got to experience the kind of drinking states I was getting myself into. So she suggested that I seek help. And that's, as any recovering alcoholic will tell you, it doesn't work like that. You have to want it for yourself. So at that time I didn't. Well, I thought I did. Maybe I did on some level. And so I went to meet John and Dan, and they gave me the Big Book, and I read the introduction and I felt some identification, and I posted about it on the Comfort Cafe. So it was obviously in my mind. And there are entries in my journal where I've written drunk. I can remember one time drunk making a phone call to a friend of mine who was a drug addict back in Scotland, and I didn't get him on the phone. I spoke to his mum. For some reason I remember this. I think this was probably in post-blackout depression and emotional highly strung state. And I'm sorry to say that that friend of mine is no longer with us. He did eventually die of a drug overdose. But I reached out to him because I knew that he was an addict, and I thought, you know, this is the kind of person I should be talking to. So that's what Alcoholics Anonymous gives me. It gives me people that I can talk to when I'm feeling that kind of feeling, which I'm, grateful to say hasn't been for a long time. I do feel desperate sometimes, but it's not on the back of a drinking binge. At least it hasn't been for 15 years. So that's a good thing, right? And so Kazakhstan has some really fond memories and also some memories of becoming a fully fledged alcoholic if I wasn't already, which I'm pretty sure I was. And that's what I brought back with me. I left there in May 2001. And we got our first apartment together in Luxembourg. My wife had a job in Luxembourg, and that's actually in my journal entries as well. I think it was on this day yesterday in 2001 that she got offered a job at the Banque de Luxembourg as a translator, and she didn't take the job. And having just read her entry yesterday, it sounded like an amazing job actually. But she had another job in line at the same time, and she took the other job, which turned out to be a good move, I think, because we made some good friends, but I made a best friend through my wife's taking that job. This is a friend who I got to see again last year in Luxembourg when I went to visit for the first time since we left in 2008. And this friend of mine has become incredibly dear to me, and we're still in contact. And yeah, I love her dearly. So that was a result of my wife's not taking the job at the bank, and instead taking a job at a, what would I call it, a digital startup. We've got some more people coming in. These are some part-time YouTube people. This is Sanji, the guy I was telling you about, who said it was 36 degrees in Melbourne. I think it's Melbourne. Eric in Switzerland. What international friends I have. And one of my besties, Nicola in Ireland. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So these are all friends I've made from the Part-Time YouTuber Academy, which has been life-changing in so many ways. So we got our first apartment in Luxembourg. And I remember at the time my wife was actually dog sitting for some friends of hers. And so I spent the first couple of nights in our apartment on my own. Now we had no furniture, we had a camp bed. There was a roll mat. No, it was an air bed. We had air beds and sleeping bags. And my wife was dog sitting, so I saw this as an opportunity to drink, which I did. And I remember looking out the window, thinking to myself, what am I going to do about this? I'm not going to have a chance to drink like I'm used to drinking anymore. And I didn't like that feeling. I was like, what am I going to do here? And here she is, Esther. Great to see you. Thanks for checking in, Esther. Esther's my good friend, my accountability partner. She makes sure I get stuff done. So, yeah, I didn't know how I was going to drink, and I remember, we'll jump forward a little bit to the same apartment. My daughter was born, March 2004. And I remember going into the co-op, not the co-op, there's no co-ops in Luxembourg. I went to Cactus, the supermarket, and I remember buying wine and telling the checkout lady how excited I was at having just had my first child. And so naturally I went home and drank the wine. And I think I was watching 24 at the time, the first season, with wine. And then having to go into the maternity in the morning to see my wife and child hungover and pretend that I wasn't hungover. And that lasted till she got home, which was 3 nights, I think. But I saw it as an opportunity. You know, I had an empty. Of course I was going to drink. I didn't know when the next empty was going to be. And that became a pattern for my life. I used to look in the calendar to plan for when my wife was going to be going away overnight, or I was going to be going back to Scotland to visit my pals and my family. And I would look forward to these occasions because it would mean I could drink properly. I have to say, that's not much of an existence. But that's how it was. So alcohol was a really big part of my life, and I knew that there was going to come a time when I would either lose it all or I would find a way to keep it. Thankfully, it was the second thing. So my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, in 2000. My second was in Luxembourg, September 2005. So there are 5 years of alcoholic drinking, on top of the years before of alcoholic drinking, but I look at that as a kind of, what would I call it, the final stage. So I got sober in 2005, which would make me 33, I think. October 2005 would be my birthday. I was born on 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. So yeah, I would have been 33 in September 2005. I'm 49 now, and I'm still, thankfully, sober. So that's the story of alcoholism in 2 countries. I moved to Arran in 2008, and I knew before coming here that there was a good Alcoholics Anonymous community, because I'd been to a meeting, I think I'd been twice actually, when I'd been over to visit. And I remember my first meeting here as a visitor was the Tuesday afternoon meeting in Brodick Hall, or Brodick Church Hall rather. And it was the first meeting I'd experienced where they had a thing called the top table. We didn't have that in the Luxembourg meetings. In Luxembourg it was just a circle around the room, so chairs against the wall. And there would be a chairperson who would read the preamble, but that was really all that the chairperson did. And it was a rotating chairperson, so you got a turn every month. We had a group conscience and it was assigned who was going to take that role, which meant you had to get there early and turn the coffee machine on and open the doors and, you know, put the heater on if it was winter, and open the windows if it was summer, that kind of stuff. It's what they call service. And service is a big part of AA actually. It's a way of giving you responsibility and sobriety, making you feel like you're obliged to show up, and it works. It's an incredibly powerful thing. There's Moonfan. Hey Moonfan, hope you're well. Did you see my live stream yesterday? Was that a live stream? No, it wasn't, it was a photo. Instagram stories is where it would be. A little bit of afternoon moon above Holy Isle. And here's another amazing person from the Part-Time YouTuber Academy who's about to publish a rather personal and interesting story about becoming a dentist. I've had a sneak peek. You're going to love it. So yeah, what was I talking about there? Coming to Arran, finding meetings, doing service, and the first meeting was Brodick Church Hall, and the top table was somebody who was a visitor, and basically involved sitting at the table and telling your story, you know, sharing your experience, your strength and your hope. And when I moved here, it was fairly soon after that the Wednesday night group started up by a good friend of mine who's maybe on this call. So every Wednesday night that became my home group down in Lamlash Church Hall. And it became a big book meeting, which meant that we would sit and we would read through the big book. We would take it in turns and we would go round and we would read a few pages, and then we would talk about what those pages sparked off in our minds about our own story. Because that's how it works. You share your own story. Because it's all we have, right? I can't share anyone else's story. I can only share mine. And I know that in so doing, it helps other people. Because alcoholism is a lonely business. And when you get to hear somebody sharing a story that you can identify with, it can make you feel that you're with your people, that you're not alone. And that's why I tend to finish my videos on YouTube with the phrase, "You're not alone." Because I know I felt that way. It's a lonely, lonely business. I'm pleased to say that the AA community here on Arran is still going strong. I've recently refound it after having not attended for a while. Of course it's on Zoom now. I talked about that in my last podcast episode, which I would love for you to listen to. It's called Quoth the Camser. So if you're on my Facebook page watching this live stream, you'll know about Quoth the Camser, because that's the page that you're on right now. And I'm going out once a week at the moment, putting those podcasts out, and I'm live streaming that as a way of using my time efficiently, really, and getting 2 pieces of content from a single dog walk. But I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it a lot. In fact, I did it twice this week, so I've got next week's podcast already recorded and in the can, because I had the opportunity to do it, so it made sense just to do it. So yeah, I'm grateful that I've reconnected with the AA community here on Arran, and yes, it's on Zoom, so it's a little weird, but you know, there's still incredible value in attending. I'm not making the Wednesday night meetings now because of We Only Know What We Know, which is a group that we started on the back of the Part-Time YouTuber Academy, and we're putting out talks on a Wednesday night. Talks, or as we had last week, a productive party, which is incredible. I'll just finish by talking a little bit about that. In fact, maybe no I won't, because we're at half an hour now. Maybe I'll keep that for another time and talk to you about how incredible that Part-Time YouTuber Academy has been for my life and my sobriety and my recovery. So yeah, subscribe if you want to hear that story. So I'm going to play a tune. This is one of my probably most challenging tunes, and I did play it earlier in the week. This is a tune that I remember sitting in Luxembourg with the tablature for. It's a traditional folk song that I first heard being played by Bert Jansch. And Bert is the reason I bought my first guitar when I was 21 in 1992. Yeah, 1992. My arithmetic's so awful. And I remember learning this tune and thinking to myself, if I could learn to play that tune, I would be done. It was just so challenging and so beyond my capabilities. But I persevered and I learnt it, and it's still challenging to play, and I wasn't done. That's the great thing about creative endeavours or anything worthwhile doing. You're never done. You just keep wanting more. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Anyway, so this is called Blackwater Side, and I may mess it up, and that's okay because I'm with friends. Alright, so let's see how this comes out. Well, that could have gone worse. Blackwater Side. I think I might just finish the call and keep playing guitar for a little while. Thank you all for coming on and supporting me, watching my live stream. I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. You know, that kind of thing. It really helps the algorithm to put my content in front of people who could find help. And if you would like to get my newsletter and be notified of when my my streams are going out. Well, you'll get notifications of streams if you subscribe to my YouTube, to my Facebook page at Quoth the Camser, or on my Twitter at Camule. If you subscribe to my newsletter at camscampbell.substack.com, you will get a weekly newsletter with a link to my latest video, my latest podcast, and a few thoughts for the week. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the Zoom grid. Bye for now.